We are talking to Rejean Houle, who is Managing Director of Badzilla Dispensary Clinic, Administrator of MMAR Coalition Against Repeal, and Chief Executive Officer at Deaths for Marijuana International. So what can you tell people who doesn't know who you are about yourself and about your activism in the cannabis community?
Well, it all started out where I came out from the military service, working abroad with the military. I had some PTSD issues. At the time, this was in the early 90s. I didn't have that much support, and there wasn't that much mental health support in the military or in the government, specifically regarding post-traumatic stress syndrome. So I self-medicated. Undoubtedly, I had to basically try different types of things. I did try depression medication, and really this medication brought me to an absolute other world. I wasn't able to be functional. So I tried different types of things. I ended up settling with marijuana because, really the healing power of cannabis is incredible. And for guys like me, sometimes you need a little bit of help with forgetting what you have been through. So I chose marijuana because it's a natural solution. From there, I was, not the richest fella on the planet, so I started growing my own marijuana. And with the excess of the medication, I basically gave it to other dispensaries. Basically, the start of my activism was more, I would say, a different type of approach than your average type of person. And so with that, at the time, me and my wife, we decided by giving the excess marijuana, my wife wanted to do some cooking for the clubs, and so did I, some baking. So we found a need where there was some medical patients that were being served edibles and they weren't appropriate. So they were just like hockey pucks, really nothing that's too impressive. And so we did a lot of research and whatnot, and we wanted people to be happy and have fun with their medication as opposed to, having a really bitter taste in their mouth. So we started cooking for the clubs. All the while, we were doing some farmers market activities at a local event here, which is called 420 and Cannabis Day. We also do other special events, but namely those big ones. And we got a really good name because we wanted to make people smile above all else, right? And so all our food that we created was sort of gourmet edible. This was so that people have options, and have fun with it. And so knowing what the needs were from the medical community, we kept on pushing and wanting to do different types of things on different levels of government. By this time, this was last year, 2014, 2 years ago now, we started getting so big in our activities that we couldn't do it at my home anymore. So we had to open up a shop. In 2014, late 2014, we opened up Badzilla at the Kingsway location. And in September 2014, the police came and they raided our shop. They confiscated everything. And at that time, there was about 100 dispensaries, and there was technically no rules. So it was really like wild, wild west. So what we tried to do is we tried to have a open conversation with the government on different types of levels, more specifically the municipal level. We engaged the municipal level to try and get not only a business license for retail selling cannabis, which is extremely different for most of us, even here in Canada. It's not, it's still very hidden. So we lobbied municipal government. We formulated a committee which would take care of all different types of needs, specifically Well, here, let me go back a little bit to where we were with Budzilla, so you get a better idea of how the activism was created.
Okay.
So we got raided in 2014. Basically, that was a shell shock. I had about 30 police officers come in the door at 9 a.m. on September 2nd, 2014. The officers were fairly gentle, but at the same time, obviously, machine guns are extremely intimidating. So at the time, what I was trying to do is I was trying to work with the city and also the Vancouver Coastal Health Society, which is responsible for food safety. Now, Budzilla, we do a lot of things. We actually did as many things as we possibly could to try and expand our cause. So what that means is we openly said online and elsewhere throughout the community that we were distributors. So that being said, the police looked at that and said, "Oh, big fish," they're still thinking, like in a criminal way, right? So that kind of raised some red flags for them. We were, as far as I know, the first open business that discusses openly being able to create edibles on site. So that creates a whole new dimension of issues that people need to deal with. So Vancouver Coastal Health, which is the people that take care of restaurants and stuff like that, they needed to be informed, and we also tried to get the go-ahead from them before getting our business license from the city. At the time, there was no tax bracket for cannabis. There was no... it was really... Dispensaries were more of a closed, hidden type of thing at that time. So another way that we wanted to open things up is to literally have the view from the front to the back of the store be able to be clear line of sight. So in other words, we're not hiding anything. I don't know if you've seen the pictures of our store, but one part of our store is a lounge, and there's some massive windows that you can see right into the kitchen or right into the dispensary. So it's really a very open concept. So that as well, kind of got us noticed. We also did the dispensary part afterwards. The whole premise of Budzilla was to have a locked door, and other dispensaries would come to Budzilla and purchase their edibles and go back to their stores, right, with the materials. We, however, found a need immediately. Patients were coming up. We had our store banners and stickers everywhere. So they were like, "Hey, you serve cannabis?" And we were like, "No, not technically. We just want to supply." So the need was so great. We saw the need, and we opened up a cannabis dispensary. Now, as you see, I've touched on a few different types of things now. Not only just having a store, we have the lounge, we have the kitchen, we have the dispensary, and we have the distributor part of the business. So we bit off a lot more than your usual store, which means a lot of people misunderstood our intentions. So there was complaints. There's a little bit of jealousy, of course, in anything you do. As long as you're successful, then some people won't like that. So the police came in 2014, September, raided us. It really, psychologically speaking, especially being a PTSD patient, having psychological issues, it was very hard. It took the wind out of me, so much so that that day, so we got raided at 9 in the morning. We got released at about 12 in the afternoon. That day was technically the only day that we were closed. The day after, I was called by media, and more specifically called by a few activists, and they told me, look, you're in this for the fight. It's not about the money. So act like it. Don't be scared of these people. Stand up. And so that was my beginning of my activism career, I guess you would say, is when they told me stop baking. Technically, they told me to stop operations, but the day after we just opened right back up because the community was so supportive. The community was so supportive, the activists, that they flooded the Vancouver Police Department's webpage. They also flooded their Facebook page. And it was all over the paper. There's literally thousands of articles about how Budzilla got raided and for what more specifically. Now, the police thought that it would be a good idea and it would be original of them to display the edibles more so than the cannabis. Because, again, they're gourmet edibles, they're unique. But that backfired on them. Now the whole community saw the ridiculousness of a product that technically you cannot die from. It doesn't hurt you. The worst that happens is you go to sleep.
Yes.
And worst of all, now they're trying to ridiculize me by saying that I'm selling food. So everybody turned around and said, hey, whoa, would you please stop already? Like, this is ridiculous. Just because you're getting complaints that are technically not even founded, right? So if this was a real business, these wouldn't be real complaints, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my whole heart and soul has been ripped out of the operation, which was to me baking. Baking for me is very big. It's therapeutic. I spend time with myself. I even meditate a little bit, right? So it's very therapeutic. So now, after September 2014, I'm not allowed to bake. Technically not even allowed to operate. We opened our doors back up. We continued serving cannabis. We stopped the kitchen. We continued the lounge. We also continued the distributor angle of our business.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because you are now talking about how much activism was involved around your dispensary, and a lot of people who are in the marijuana industry are already got their own dispensaries. So what is the law in Canada, in Vancouver especially? Can you own dispensary or is it illegal?
Technically, legally, in legal language, it is illegal to operate a dispensary on any level of government. Federally speaking, I was charged with trafficking for the purpose, possession for the purpose of trafficking. I was also charged with possession, simple possession. These charges, they're federal indictments, right? And so if convicted, I'm still in court right now. If convicted, I face more than 2 years minimum mandatory sentence. So that's just one side of it. The other side of it too, so the legality on a provincial level, you're not technically at that time, in 2014, paying taxes. So on a federal level and provincial level, that's an issue, right? These are all things that we needed to work out. On a local municipal level, again, it's still illegal, but you have to understand the history of Vancouver. Cannabis activism, especially medical, has been established for around 20-25 years, right? So what that means is we actually have a place where we all gather and we end up protesting the fact that we're under some unjust laws. Under the Charter of Freedoms and Rights in Canada, Section 2, there's a right to assembly. So here you're allowed to assemble and protest something that bothers you.
between licensed producers and the small growers, donors of dispensaries, because cannabis is legal for medicinal purposes in Canada. So why is there like two businesses, licensed producers and owners of dispensary, and they're like are not in the same page? Am I right?
Correct. So this is a fight that has been fought in Supreme Court in Canada. It has been deemed basically illegal for the government to try and prevent people from utilizing cannabis as medicine. The different types of Supreme Court battles that have happened have led up to the federal government trying to create a system where they have to serve patients, medical patients that are approved by doctors, with cannabis. So basically what happened is the court forced the federal government to have a medical cannabis system. Of course, the court took this personally. The government took this personally, having been ordered, because they're usually in the business of making their own rules. Mm-hmm. That being said, there's different types of Supreme Court battles that have forced the government to act in a specific way. That being said, the licensed producer system is what came out of that. Before, there was a program called the MMAR. It was a broken system which didn't serve people, and it infringed upon people's privacy. There was a whole lot of issues, so the federal court system told the federal government, you need to change this, you need to make this better, and you need to make it so that people have equal access to cannabis. Again, the federal government doesn't like to be told what to do. They're usually in the business of doing what they do, and it's, the prime minister that decides, and that's how it happens. Mm-hmm. So now they're left with a massive problem, and every step of the way it was intentionally mismanaged because people in federal government were taking this personally. Now, the activists always won in court because obviously these are human rights, and we're very big on human rights and equality. And so we felt that we were being discriminated against. And so that's how the licensed producer system happened. At the same time that there's licensed producers, now for 20 years there's been medical dispensaries. There's been a lot of them in British Columbia, more specifically in Vancouver. The culture here in Vancouver is one of a hippie era. Basically, all the Vietnam draft dodgers, so people that were forced to go in the military that did not want to go, hippies, basically left the USA and came to Vancouver. This is why the cannabis culture here is so strong. We have a very, very deep foundation in our beliefs. So now you have a legal, massive federal system that is angry at the people and not serving them properly. And so there's obviously a need for people to be served properly. And so cannabis dispensaries started rising in British Columbia as a civil act of disobedience. Again, activism. Because we deal with people that are usually have gone through the pharmacopoeia and have tried multiple types of medications, and now they're at a point where either they're in liver failure, or they're at a point where they're end life stage, palliative care, and these people have no recourse to try and extend their lives or to have a better quality of life. So this is actually a serious issue when you're seeing the medical doctors failing with pharmacopoeia to treat specific individuals and conditions. For example, I've had a patient with psoriasis. So this is usually on the lower end of the spectrum, a manageable type of skin disease. It starts at your elbow or anywhere usually where you have skin, where you have contact with other materials. It's an irritation. Well, this lady, she had gone through 18 years of treatments through pharmacies and doctors, and they were still not successful. At this point, she's about 73% of her body covered in psoriasis, and her system has gone septic. Septic means that your system is shutting down. It's working against you. It's basically telling your body that it's time to die. We treated her with cannabis oils and also salves and also some cannabis lotions. She's now fully recovered. She went from she was dying, where doctors were telling her, you have no choice anymore, there's nothing we can do, to fully recovered. You know, we see a lot of cancer patients with melanoma. For example, one of my biggest cases was a person that had melanoma across their chest and around onto their back. So this is where your skin is turning black. Your skin is dying from cancer. It's being poisoned. Cannabis treats tumorous cells very nicely in that it tells them to suicide themselves. So basically, cannabis is telling the poison, your garbage, go away.
It's important that the owners of dispensaries have the right to treat people, to treat patients, because they are in everyday communication with them. They know exactly what's happening to them. They know what was going wrong with them. And if some licensed producers have information about the patients, but they don't have like the human interaction with them. I think that's the main problem between the LPs and dispensary. What are some other issues that it's better to have dispensary, some people who know exactly what the patients need, and LPs who are just the system, nothing else?
There's many different conditions that can be treated with cannabis. And what they're trying to do is a blanket approach, right? So they're trying to treat everything with one thing, and that's absolutely an incorrect way of doing business. For example, you have different dosages when it comes to prescribed medication. These licensed producers don't understand dosage. They're not even there yet. To give you an example of how this system has been corrupted already, this has become agro-corporate, globalist type of takeover of our culture. So what that means is we have big businesses from other countries that come into Canada. They don't even know how to grow marijuana. Okay, they don't even process it correctly. And then they try to sell this to medical patients that are in dire need. As they're selling it, there is no interaction, or practically very little interaction, with the patient and the licensed producer, simply because they don't have that much staff. They're focusing on growing cannabis. They're not focusing on the holistic approach, which is, trying to consult with the patient and figure out exactly how we can cure as opposed to treat as much as possible. So there's a major disconnect between, so what it turns out to be is the licensed producers are shareholders. These people are investors, lawyers, and they don't understand cannabis. And this is self-admitted with these people, that they have never grew cannabis before. These are people that have grown corn. And so now not only are we seeing those corporations coming in, but we're seeing some different types of exemptions that are being made for fungicide or pesticide companies. What we've discovered is that Monsanto is one of them. Monsanto is known worldwide for genetically modified organisms and genetically modified food. Not only do they do that, they also offer a product which is called Roundoff. It's a glyphosate. this product basically has been shown to encourage and promote cancer. So now you're putting on a poisonous pesticide onto a natural plant that has not even been grown properly. Not only has it not been grown properly, it hasn't been matured enough. So the product is rushed to the market. So now you have all kinds of problems, okay? In a massive agro business like that, you cannot control quality simply because of the fact that there's a lot of things that can go wrong when you're growing, specifically when it's not organically. So how they decide to deal with this is to irradiate the product, radiation. You've got these three major issues. On top of that, the way that they package their product, they send the product already wet. Now you're at a point where, for starters, they will cut down the plant when it's not even mature, so it's still in vegetative state. It's not even in flowering yet. They haven't even flowered the plant, they're cutting it down. They're adding poisonous, genetically modified pesticides. They're irradiating the product. And on top of that, now they're shipping the product when it's wet. So it rots in the mail. It becomes rotten in the mail.
They are like greedy dealers or something like that, who just want the money.
Of course, and this is plain and simple. You know, there's no consultation. It's become a system, a broken system that has just started, and it's extremely broken already. And it's all about, on the licensed producer side, there's no compassion, there's no community interest or participation. These licensed producers, even when they have a vested interest in the Supreme Court cases, they don't support them. This is all community funded. This is all through activists raising, fundraising funds, right? And these are extremely big court cases. You're talking upwards to $1 million court cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is not like just one individual is affected or one individual is being covered by this kind of activism and fundraising. So you see the difference in the human perspective, which is the dispensaries, the people that are actually doing this, that have created this system for what it is supposed to be, which is to heal people, to try and have them recover as much as possible. And it's mutated into this giant cold machine that is almost to the point where it's unrelative. It's almost to the point where we are speaking two different languages. And the licensed producers, the worst of it all is that they will say that dispensaries are their competition and that dispensaries need to be eliminated. Dispensaries, remember, are illegal on all levels. But the definition of legal is basically who can make money and who can't. Now, we have been labeled criminals our whole lives because we believe in this. We have ignored that to a certain degree because we know that what we do, our healing power, helps far more than anything that these people could offer. So, at the end of the day, we believe that we're in the right, even though we're breaking the law. Even people that don't consume cannabis saw this, us treating them, and saw the value in us. That's why we are socially accepted. That's why we can have stores and have other businesses beside us, restaurants, different kinds of stores, just general basic stores. And we're able to coexist in a community because we're not criminals. We're here to enhance our community. And so this whole time we've had to fight an extremely harsh battle because we were labeled the criminals, right? And so people are getting killed, people are getting their houses destroyed, people are getting their dogs killed, people are having their families torn apart. You're talking about, sending kids to the Children's Aid Society for numerous amounts of years. So you're splitting up families, and all this over a victimless crime. All of this over people trying to help others. And so with time, public perception has changed in our favor. And so by showing the community that we want to be part of it, that we want to enhance it, to better it, the community has accepted us. So now really, the local municipal government has no choice. It's the voice of the people. This reverberated and got stronger and stronger and stronger, became a provincial thing. And now, with the fact that they have a broken system, licensed producers, it looks so bad on them that our issue became a national one. So now, as an activist, we're going into different kinds of areas. We're starting to go into federal government to do some lobbying. We're changing laws with lawyers and doctors. We work very closely with different types of associations like the BC Cancer Association. You know, we're starting to really see the integration now, whether or not it's illegal, into different types of medical systems. For example, crisis situation, talking emergency. Recently, there was a case that we helped out with little baby MJ. Little baby MJ has two parents that are epileptic, so they use cannabis. They understand the power of CBD as well, which stands for cannabidiol. These people have had a child, little baby MJ. She immediately started seizing. She was premature by 4 months, so she was born at 5 months old. She was already having seizures, so much so that she had never opened up her eyes until we had treated her. When we heard of the case, the Ministry of Health, federal ministry also, wanted to take the child away and to basically kill the child by taking her off of life support. With our activist community and our organization, we brought in a lawyer and put in an injunction to stop all proceedings. And we showed that with CBD, which is non-euphoric, you don't get high off of CBD by itself, that we could treat this child in a safe manner. For the first time after being treated, after 3 months, this little baby opened up her eyes. So this child's head was so swollen that she could not open up her eyes. She was seizing because she was having difficulties with the swelling on her brain. The CBD reduced the swelling. Now this child is in full recovery, and she's also up and running, having all kinds of fun. So you can see, once again, from a government perspective, a person's life was almost extinguished. From our perspective, not only did we know we could save her, but you see how many things we have to fight to go through in order to just help someone.
For your last words, what would you like to say to the activists and for the people who are treating themselves with the cannabis for last thing in this interview?
Last word on this topic, I would say, and thank you very much, by the way, for having me on your show. I would say is never give up. There's very dark times. There's a lot of persecution and oppression, but always stay positive. Always try to educate people. And if you keep on educating people, it might take a while, but eventually it'll work.